your lock for the week. And actually, tell you what, since we've gone through all the matches and we're getting into fantasy, let's bring Jason in here. Jason, fantasy picks this week, before we get into Atlanta and Colorado. Courtesy of our friends at the Jason Wright Agency, lock of the week, Walker Zimmerman at $9.7 million. About a quarter of the folks have picked Walker Zimmerman going up against Miami, but Walker Zimmerman at 9.7 is the lock and goalkeeper and defense.
Can't really argue with that too much when you look at Nashville and Miami, although Miami's in good form. They are on the road in this one. So, yeah, I like that pick.
All right, and then midfield and forward lock is Denny Bouanga at 11.9, 26% have taken him on a double match week.
Yeah, Kansas City's won 2 in a row. That's who LAFC's facing tonight. But, yeah, double match week, Bouanga, pretty good.
Consider goalkeeper and defense Joe Willis at 9.3 in Nashville's double match week. Only 4% have picked Joe Willis so far.
Yeah, same thing we talked about. I mean, Willis is one of the more underrated guys. And I think he's back to his good form after kind of wobbling there for a minute where Nashville and Gary Smith looked like they were thinking about going in a different direction at goalkeeper. But Willis is back to his best. So, yeah, that's a good pick, and it's one that I don't know why Joe Willis flies under the radar so much. I mean, I didn't know why they were looking at another goalkeeper. He's been one of the best in the league since he went to Nashville.
And then Hani Mukhtar is the consider on midfield and forward for the offensive reasons attached to Nashville.
So the Jason Wright Agency is trying to become a Nashville sponsor, it sounds like.
Yeah, 3 of the 6 are Nashville picks. Yeah,
I mean, it's all good.
Walker Zimmerman, Joe Willis, Hani Mukhtar. And your value pick for goalkeeper and defense, Danil Maldonado. $6.6 million versus Sporting in San Jose. Only 1% have picked Maldonado out of LAFC.
That's a bold pick, but again, when you're looking at trying to find a value pick, unless it's somebody who's new to the league or somebody who has just come up from like Next Pro and is killing it right now, like going with a lesser player from an LAFC is pretty good move right now.
Midfield forward value pick Enzo Capetti at 6.6 going up against Chicago and Nashville. Only 1% have picked Capetti so far.
Only 1% have picked Capetti. That's crazy because 1, he's fresh. 2, Charlotte's at home for both games. And he's their attack. He's their best player in my opinion. So yeah, that's a really good move.
There you go. That's your fantasy selections brought to us by our friends at the Jason Wright Agency. Jason Wright with a W Agency on Facebook. Jason Wright with a WAGEN on Twitter. If you haven't joined the Fantasy League, join the Fantasy League because I'm sure you could do better than I am this year because I am hurting in the Fantasy League, both in the OG Pro Rel League and in the overall. So join the league and beat me. I guess
John's not sandbagging y'all either. John's just not good.
No.
Yeah, you don't have any players who have left the league, do you?
Not this time right now.
Did you keep Gruezo on your team until he came back to the league?
Yes, actually I did.
Okay, that's what I figured.
Yeah. So that was
honestly, I respect the dedication.
I mean, sure.
Yeah. News out of Barca before we get into Atlanta and Colorado. Matteo Alemany now surprisingly set to stay at Barca, according to Fabrizio Romano, changing his mind after an official announcement of his departure, having agreed in principle with Villa. Never signed any paperwork, so Barca is now is going to supposedly hang on to Alemany going forward.
England getting denied.
Exactly. 7:39 kick. Atlanta United, Colorado Rapids. Atlanta United is a minus 152 in the juice boxes. Draw is a plus 305, and the Rapids are a plus 388. Jarrett, first question for Jason for you.
Okay, if for people who might be jumping into this without looking at Colorado, because I know Colorado has kind of been the island of misfit toys in the past. Who are you keeping an eye on, or who are you telling people to keep an eye on?
Connor Ronan, he's their best player. He's a holding midfielder. He's not somebody who's gonna wow you with a ton of stats, but he's the steadying presence that they've needed. He did have 3 assists in their win at LA Galaxy, scored the goal from the spot against Philadelphia. Ronan, previously with Wolves, he's the guy for me, and he's just one of those, guys that I think, we were just talking fantasy, like he's not going to show up there. He's not going to show up in a bunch of highlights, but he makes that team better. And this is a Colorado team that on the road has been better than they've been at home, which makes no sense in Major League Soccer. They have not won a game at home yet, and they've won 2 on the road. So Colorado is a strange one. This is a team that I think will put numbers behind the ball. Probably more of a line of 5 than the 3-4-3 that we've seen at times at home. The wingbacks will sit deeper. Will it be a true 5-3-2 or more of a 5-2-3? I think either way, you're going to put numbers behind the ball. You're going to ask Ronan to hold things down in front of the back line. And you're going to play the ball forward directly to Rubio, to Lewis, to Cabral, maybe 2 of the 3, depending on how Robin Fraser wants to handle it. And you're going to kind of go old school and ask those guys to figure it out. You're not going to build up the play. There's not going to be a lot of patterns in the attack. It's going to be numbers behind the ball, try to keep the 0 on the board. And if your 3 attacking players who all have pace, all have good individual talent, all good in 1v1s, you're going to ask them to go win the game for you.
For Atlanta United, obviously, no Andrew Gutman because of the red card. Caleb Wiley's at the U20s. What are you anticipating when it comes to starting 11s going up against this match on a quick turn from the weekend?
Well, I think that last part's the important one. And I've seen some of the conversation about playing 3-5-2 and going to 3 center backs. I don't think you're going to be able to do that because you don't have the training time to do it. And, I feel like we say this all the time, but you can't just throw players into positions and expect it to work. That's not how any good team does it. And yes, Atlanta United's a good team. Crazy. I know the narratives say otherwise. You can't play that way because then you don't have any chemistry. You're just asking guys to figure it out. Like, oh no, I'm sure you've played 3 in the back at some point recently, and maybe not with these guys, but you did. And yeah, you'll be fine. That's not how a team that wants to control games plays. That's how a reactive team plays. And it's honestly how bad teams play. So I don't think you can get to a 3-5-2 quick enough because we haven't seen it this year. It's not something that this team has played. It's not something that they train. It's not something that they've worked on so far because first portion of the season, you're trying to build the way you want to play. You get later into the year, you can make little tweaks like that. You have a full week of training and you decide that's the tactical approach against a team, you can then work through it. When you don't have a full week of training and, look, you don't have a lot of training time between Saturday and this one. And you don't have really hardly any training time to go at 100%. So I think you've got to go with what works. So you get back to the decision, like you can go kind of 50-50 on it and play a Luis Abram as a left back who is really a center back, but has played left back. He's not going to get forward as much as a typical left back would, but he can be a hybrid to allow you to have kind of 3 center backs if you decide that's the way to go. I think that's the riskiest option. Aiden McFadden would be another option. We've seen him play left back for Atlanta United too. Saw it with the preseason as well. He played right back last year, pretty much exclusively, but this year he's played a lot of left back, I think, to become that utility fullback as needed for both teams, for the first team when they need it and for the second team. So he can allow guys like Tyler Young to play on the right, get his minutes, and then he can move over to the right and allow somebody like Fuad Adeniyi to play at the left back position like we've seen in the last couple of games. So McFadden's a possibility. He came off in the 60th minute on Sunday against Crown Legacy, I think by design, knowing that he would be needed for this one and probably needed for a little while with Wiley away. But Ronald Hernandez is the easiest solution here. Ronald Hernandez is someone that Gonzalo Pineda has talked about in terms of training well, and the minutes haven't been there for him because Brooks Lennon has been outstanding this season. So Hernandez moving over to the left side, we've already seen that before during his time here in Atlanta. He's a right back by trade, but he's good enough with his left to not have to play it as an inverted fullback. So all his runs, when he gets forward, it's not all going to be getting in on his right foot. He can cross with his left. He can play on his left foot. So he can give you everything you need. But I think just being on the opposite side from where he is most comfortable, he'll probably stay home a little bit more than an Andrew Gutman or a Caleb Wiley would out of that position. So again, talking about, the clamor, I think, from some, which it goes back and forth, I mean, in terms of, do the fans want this team to play in a 3-5-2 or a 3-4-3 as opposed to a 4-3-3? I think Hernandez gives you a little bit of that in between, where little safer in terms of staying home versus a Gutman or a Wiley, but also can get forward and stretch the field in the ways that Atlanta wants their fullbacks to do.
Jarrett, go for it.
Let's talk about the midfield, because Amar Sejdic sounds like he's going to be missing an extended period of time with injury. It's Mateus Asetu, I imagine.
100% it's Mateus Asetu.
However, the options that open up behind him, is it a Johnny Fortune being that guy off the bench? Is it Santiago Sosa at times, depending on what the game calls for, coming in and kind of providing some sandpaper in that midfield and his ability on the ball?
Well, I think it's twofold, because one, Josetu started the season as the 8. He was injured. Sejdic got the opportunity and really kept the position kind of on lock because he's been so good. He's going to be out for a little while to calf injury. I'm assuming of a muscular nature. I don't think it's anything like a tear or anything like that. You could see the issue happen off the ball on Saturday night, and I thought he was going to have to come out in the first half. He was able to play, and he was moving around fine. I mean, I guess it loosened back up, and he was able to go for a while. Had to come out in the second half. Amar's been a really good connector for this midfield. Josetu can do a lot of that, but Josetu is a little more physical. He's a little more of a guy who can dribble to break lines. Probably a little bit better defender, can sit back a little deeper when needed and give you more of the defensive side of the 8, the box to box, the mixed midfielder. Mateus can give you a good bit of that. So it's Mateus Josetu as the 8. I don't think there's any question about that. The opportunity that presents itself, I don't think it's as much for Sosa, because Sosa and Ibarra is a 50-50 competition as well in general, where Sosa's had some good moments since getting the opportunity after Ibarra started the season really well. I loved the work from Franco Ibarra late in the game when it's 3-0 down. He was one who really was defending the shirt, defending the crest, all those intangibles that we talk about. He was fighting, and I love
his heat map was all over God's creation, and he let it break at one point trying to make something happen.
Yeah, I love to see it, but that doesn't take away from the fact that at times in this game, and this wasn't the case when he was playing consistently earlier, at times in this game, he wasn't good enough on the ball. He wasn't good enough with his distribution. The work rate, though, I love it, and he's going to keep getting minutes because of that. But I think the competition with Ibarra and Sosa isn't fully decided. I think you'll see both play, especially in weeks like this, where you're going to have 90 minutes, then a couple of days rest, then 90 minutes, and a few days rest, then 90 minutes. You're going to have to need both of them at the 6. So I think the opportunity that presents itself is for a Johnny Fortune. And Johnny's someone that Gonzalo Pineda really likes. Josetu isn't going to be able to play every single minute, I don't think. I hope he can. But when he needs a break, you need a Johnny Fortune ready to go. And that means he's got to step up and deliver. That's what happens in these situations for young players. We saw it last year with a Caleb Wiley. Yes, he made mistakes when he got a lot of minutes at fullback last year with all the injuries, but it served him better in the long run. And he played well. He did make mistakes. You're going to have to expect some mistakes with a young player who steps in as depth gets tested. But they've got to step up as well. And that's what it comes down to, because you never know when you get that opportunity. An injury can happen, a couple injuries can happen, call-ups can happen, and the door opens. And you've got to do everything as a young player to keep that door open and not let it close on you. And I think, we've talked about it from the backup forward position. There's been opportunities for Miguel Berry, for Machop Chol to lock down that spot, and neither one has. If a Johnny Fortune gets an opportunity, he's got to come in and deliver. And I think he will over these next few weeks with Amar Sejdic. I'm guessing it's going to be not just a one game kind of thing. I'm guessing it's going to be at least a couple of weeks. So Johnny Fortune has to be ready because you never know when that opportunity is going to come, and he's got to take full advantage of it because he's got the ability to.
You've spent time at the Children's Healthcare of Atlanta training ground this week, and you got to listen to Quentin Westberg and the Q&A that was there with Q. Sorry, that just was there.
Bump.
Unintentional. I thought that the Q&A that you had with Q was really interesting about addressing the lulls and being there and being present for the 30 minutes and things like that. I thought that was really intriguing stuff. For those that didn't get the chance to listen to the conversation that was had with Quentin Westberg, go into that a little bit for me.
Yeah, I'll try to paraphrase. It came up on my Atlanta Soccer Tonight show on Monday night. I think there was a lot of talk about intensity and effort and urgency as the same thing, and they're not. The idea that people would take the post-game comments and say that, well, the team's not trying and not playing hard, that's not true. That's flat out not true, and that's stretching words to mean something that they don't. You also have to remember that Gonzalo Pineda's first language is Spanish. So sometimes words get chosen, and he talked about it yesterday. Urgency was really the better way to put it, and that's what he talked about with the players. Intensity doesn't cover in the entire aspect of what he was talking about. So kind of as I was going back through this game and thinking back to Miami and preparing for the show on Monday night, you have to figure out how to manage those lulls in urgency and intensity, and in not effort, but in just full capacity to work, because they happen. I don't care what team you're talking about. We've talked about this from the pressing team perspective. They can't run 100 miles an hour for 90 minutes. It's just not how your body is built. You have to slow down at some point. You have to catch your breath. You have to let the lungs and the muscles reload. And that's the same for a team that plays in the way that Atlanta United does, especially the way these games have gone, where the last two specifically, Atlanta's had full control of the game in the first 30 minutes. Last two games, first 30 minutes, the opponent had no shots. The Charlotte goal came in what minute? I'm saying 30. I want to make sure that this isn't going to be twisted around on me if they scored in the 28th.
Okay. I'll dig it up. Keep going.
Wherever. You get my drift. That was their first shot. Miami didn't have their first shot until after the 30th minute in Fort Lauderdale. Atlanta didn't get anything to show for the control. And what happens a lot of times is you hit a point after that much control without something to show for it, that there's that drop, that lull. And you have to figure out how to manage it. Some teams will just drop numbers behind the ball and kind of ride things out, hold on to the ropes, let things reload and go from there. Others will kind of double down. Others will try to keep the ball and rest in possession in a lot of ways. Where was the goal in the Charlotte game? You got it?
18th minute for Miram.
Okay, that was a little bit earlier than I thought. So first 15 minutes, first 18 minutes, we'll say it that way. When you have that control in games and you don't get something to show for it, there's going to be the drop. How you manage the drop is the important part. And that was what I was asking. I asked Gonzalo about it as well, and I asked Quentin about it. Quentin's one of the most thoughtful guys that you're going to get a chance to talk to when he is available for media. And he's great. He's one of the nicest guys you could ever imagine. And he gave a really thoughtful answer about the balance of patience and impatience. And that's really what this comes down to. I think the idea for me is more of you need to get something out of that control early, because when you do, the lull doesn't happen in the same way. Let's say let's say 18 minutes. Let's go there. After Atlanta had 2-3 really good opportunities before that.
Yeah.
The big kick save from Kalina, the cross from Araujo that I think Wiley put over the bar, and the cross from Lennon that Kalina got a fingertip to. That's 3 huge opportunities early that you get nothing out of. Lull. Miami, you have the Machop Chol opportunity late in that first 30 minutes. Don't get it. After, I think, a couple other shots, Miami had nothing. Lull. When you get that goal, let's say Chol scores, let's say the last of the opportunities against Charlotte, you score that. where your body might be getting tired. You get a rush of adrenaline. Boom. You're not tired. You're actually on the ascendancy, and you can go get that second then. And that's what we've seen this team do quite a bit. That's the hard part of it. So you get into the lull. How do you handle it? And it's the idea, and I think Quentin said it best. It's okay to be at 0-0 at that point if you're in control of the match. You want, obviously, 3 goals in that first period where you have the control. It's not always going to happen that way. And if it's a 1-0 win and the goal comes in the 15th minute or in the 85th minute, it still counts the same. It's still the same win. And Atlanta's got to handle those moments where maybe they get a little frustrated because they didn't get the goal. Maybe they get frustrated because of a big save. Maybe they get frustrated because of a big miss. They've got to handle those moments and still be patient in those situations. And maybe like what I said about the kind of resting in possession idea, that's where you show the patience is you don't force things when you haven't broken the opponent down. You don't force things in terms of being more aggressive and overly aggressive. You maintain your control. And sometimes the best way to maintain that control of the game in those points is to be more patient. And that's what I think this team has to find that balance of. And look, it's not an easy thing. You're not going to find metrics to back that up. You're not going to find numbers to explain how you do it. It's a lot of feel. And I think that's something that is maybe the next step for a guy like a Thiago Almada, for someone like a Luis Araujo, who at times I think their natural inclination in those moments is to try harder, to go harder, to risk it a little bit more. Whereas in those moments, maybe it's okay. I got to keep it. I got to keep working the ball around for my opportunity. And yeah, we might have 30 passes in the attacking half in a sequence because the opponent, and this is one of the reasons why this is happening, is Charlotte dropped numbers behind the ball from early on. Miami dropped numbers behind the ball from early on. Colorado's going to drop numbers behind the ball from early on. Maybe you have to take those 30 passes. Maybe you just get them moving side to side. You wait for your opening. You have a little bit of patience. When the opening hits, you strike and you go. But don't force it to then give the team an opportunity to counter and make something happen the other way when you're in that lull. And it's tough. It's really hard to do, especially with talented players who think that they can score every opportunity they have the ball at their feet. But that patience is the key. And it's a really hard thing. I think Manchester City, Barcelona, in Pep Guardiola's years, the way that they played, Bayern was a little bit different in the way they played it, but they suffered with this too. You have to deal with these moments in games. I think Arsenal's learning how to do it right now under Mikel Arteta. Teams that are going to have a lot of the ball against opponents who are going to put numbers behind it, you've got to figure out how to, I guess, accept that it's not easy to get those goals early on and not let the lack of a goal break you emotionally and hurt you going the other way. It's a really tough balance, but it's something Atlanta United's got to learn because opponents are just putting numbers behind the ball, not playing pretty soccer against Atlanta United. They don't care. They're just looking for the result, and they're getting them right now.
Broadcast plans for you and for Mike today.
It is 7 o'clock, 92.9 The Game, Odyssey app, Atlanta United app. Also, Apple TV, MLS Season Pass once the game starts. I think they usually kick that in about 7:30-ish. Just go down to the audio options and choose Home Team Radio. And we'll have a full-time report for an hour, and I won't need to be subbed out for the full-time report this time by Jarrett Smith.
Jarrett Smith subbed in last time.
We are in match compression, so, I had to come out of the match.
He did. And I was not thrown out of the booth by Miller Pope, so it was a successful night.
Yeah, I'll talk to Miller about how all that went and how much he had to restrain himself.
Miller's not one to mess with, so I leave Miller to himself.
Yes.
Jason, get back to studying. We'll catch up with you later tonight, my friend.
Sounds good. Adios.